Hello, so today I thought we'd do something with this frame. It's, I think, made of chipboard or something like that. It isn't one of Samantha Kay's, it's just a Do Crafts one. They came in all different sizes. This is a tall, thin one, but they did round, they did all different sizes. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use some fussy cut flowers, which came out of a big sheet of floral paper, and to save you watching me fussy cut things, I've just fussy cut various different pieces of it. I haven't, where it was on the edge of a page, I haven't worried about that because I can use part pieces. So this bit of the flower and the background is missing, but I'm not bothered about that. Because I can do something with that. So there's somewhere there's the complete image like those, and there's somewhere there's just part of the image like that, and that's got a straight edge, which was the edge of the paper. So I'll pop those up there. I've got this pretty little paper doily. I think there's just one here. They do stick together very much, so you've got to be careful sometimes that there isn't two, because then you're wasting one. I've got various patterned papers. I've also pre-prepared these. I've cut these to size, basically so that you don't have to watch me cut paper. There's a geometric sort of wood effect one. There is a double-sided one, which one has postcards on, or there was sort of a vague map design on that one. This is just a random blue coloured one with little bits of distress and text on, and then there's a green one. There is a sort of common theme in them all. They all sort of tie in with the colours of the flowers. Well, not the flowers. There's a little bit of pink which ties in with the flowers. There's blue in the wood, there's blue on that one. This green ties in nicely with the green foliage, but also we'll do a little bit of vintage photo, so these will tie in as well. So it's got a common theme of sort of browns, greens, pinks and blues. So I'll put my papers aside for a moment. And I've just got this laminated sheet. It's a piece of paper that's laminated, and I use it for when I'm painting MDF. I've actually done this side, but I'll show you how to do the opposite side. I'll just do a little patch just so you don't have to watch me do it all. So this is just gesso, just plain white PBO gesso. And I've just got my little paintbrush. And I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the gesso. You don't want a humongous amount, and just lightly brush it onto your frame. I tend to go several thin coats rather than a big bulky thick coat. If you get too much gesso on your brush, you'll clog all these little fine areas up. Some frames have got finer bits than others. So it's just a little bit of gesso, and just keep brushing it on, gradually covering it. Now these are mostly laser cut, and where the laser cut areas are, it will have bits of burnt, and that colour gets into your gesso. That's absolutely fine, it just gives it a more antique look. So it doesn't matter if on the edges you pick up a bit of the brown and it works into your gesso. I like that effect. I won't do all this frame because it'll be very boring, but you'll get the idea that I've more or less covered this area. I have the edges, I've done a little bit on the edges as well. I don't want them covered perfectly, because if I just have little sort of almost like dry brushed areas, it gives it more of a time-worn look. So I would do all of the frame, which as you can see I've already done on the right side. So you can see there's little bits where I've missed on the edges, there's little bits where I've missed, but that just gives it a vintage time-worn look. So I'll set my laminated sheet aside so you can see my frame. That's all done. I'm going to add a little bit of pink and possibly brown distress colour to this, just so it gives it a little bit more interest. So I've just got a sponge, and this is Victorian velvet, and I'm just going to lightly sponge a little bit of the pink, and it'll pick up in some areas more than others, mostly on the edges. Just make sure your gesso is dry before you do this, else you'll mess your sponge up. So it just gives it a little bit more of a pinky look to it. And I aren't being too precious. If some bits get more pink than others, that's fine. And you can hardly see it in some areas, but other areas you see more. So that's the pink done. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of brown to the edges, I think. Where I've got too much, I can just smudge it out. Because it's on gesso, if I've got too much, I could smudge it out. I could, if I wanted, I could remove it all. Because the gesso makes it so that I can remove areas on the inside edges as well. So the outside edges. And then a clean bit of my sponge, I'll just blend it in again. And as I say, if you get too much on, don't panic, because you've gessoed your frame. Take a baby wipe and you'll be able to wipe it off and start again. There we are. So that looks a little bit more vintage now. I might go back with a little bit more pink and be a bit more heavy-handed with the pink on the top, just in some areas. That's the thing, you can keep going back and adding more colour, and you can layer it up as well. I could have done this with blue, I could have done it with all vintage photo. You can do whatever colours you want, really. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. My inks aside. So that's our frame done. So I'll pop that up there. Now we'll work on our papers. Now I've done 4 layers. And how I started was, I started with my layer that's going to go directly underneath my frame. And I've just cut it, measured and cut it slightly bigger all the way around than my frame. The next layer, I've cut that slightly bigger still. There's no point in me giving the measurements because it depends on your frame. But basically, it's just a fraction bigger than the frame. Then each next layer, following layer, I've added on a centimetre. So basically, whatever this is, the next layer needs to be a centimetre bigger at the side and at the top. the next one another centimetre bigger than that. So each time I'm adding a centimetre on to the width and the height of the previous one. So if I lay them like this, you can see that they're gradually getting bigger. But what I'm going to do when I put it all together is have them centralised. So you get about half a centimetre all the way around each time. So to add more texture to my layers, I'm just going to get my paper and a pair of scissors. You can get distressing tools, but I tend to do it this way. And just gently, hanging onto your paper, scuff the edges of your paper. Now, if you happen to cut into your paper, don't panic, it just adds to the distressing. You can go as heavy-handed or as light as you want. Yeah, you icy, but I'm not worried because what I'll do is I'll emphasise that and curl it round. It's best if you don't have too many of those though. So if you work, start very gently, and as you gain confidence, just, if something isn't distressed enough, go back to that area again and go over again. So that, can you see, gives it a little bit more texture. So I'm going to turn the video off and I'm going to distress all 4 layers. Then you aren't watching me doing this forever. Right, so I've distressed all the edges of my papers. I've got this little tear here. I've got some areas that are more distressed than others. Some of the edges I've sort of curled it round more. Depends the weight on the weight of the paper, but you can actually curl some round quite nicely like this by just pushing your finger against the edge and have your thumb inside, and it creases it. But it does depend on the weight of your paper. This is lighter paper and you have to be a little bit more gentle with it. So I'm going to stick these layers together now. I will have some with double-sided tape to make a little bit more height, double-sided foam tape rather, to have a little bit of height. I think I'll start with double-sided tape. That's my base layer. This is the next one, so I think I'll put some double-sided foam tape on there. You do need a reasonable amount, because when you're adding so many layers, if you don't, then you've no base for all the other layers to sit on really. But I'm not going to put it under every layer, just sort of a couple probably. And I'll put some in the middle, otherwise the middle will just bow down. And what you can do just to help yourself, so you've got a little bit of wiggle room, and take the backing off your foam tape, which is very boring, I know. And then put a little bit of PVA on the top of your tape. That just gives you a bit of wiggle room because it stops it immediately completely sticking. So if you need to get it off, you can do. So this has got script on it, so I'll have it the right way up. right. Not quite right. So because I've got my PVA, I can take it off and put it back on again. That's better. There we are. The next one I think I will have just with glue. And I won't put the glue all the way around to the edges because that allows the edges to be curled up a little bit. You could do with this with double-sided tape as well. And again, just sort of fairly central. You've got a bit of wiggle room because you've got PVA. There we are. This one, I've got my little rip at the top. I think I'll have foam tape on that one. Just gives it a bit more dimension. And again, the foam tape, I aren't putting it right to the edge, so it lets my edges curl up a little bit then. So warm nowadays. I always make sure I put the lid on my PVA or else it dries up and it won't work. There we are. So that's the 4 layers, all with distressed edges. So you can see it adds quite a lot of interest having distressed edges. My frame is going to go here, but I think I'm going to put one of these lace doilies just underneath it. Now I can't decide whether I should cut the excess off or not. No, I think it adds to it the fact that it's over the edge. Don't want it particularly over the edge of the papers, but I don't mind it overlapping the layers. That might be quite nice. Got our paper now, fussy cut flowers. And because this one's got a cut edge, that was the edge of the paper, I might tuck it just underneath there. That hides it, I think. And then I could have that leaf coming over there. Do I want it higher? Oh, that would be quite a nice bit higher. And that one there. Now this is the duplicate of that. So I could have that laid up there. Yeah, on some foam tape. I think I quite like that. And then this one I've got. No. I could have it coming out there. Would be quite interesting and overlapping the edge of the page. So I think I'm going to make this into a card. I'm putting it on a card base. Do I like it there? If I've got another fussy cut flower that I could... Ah, yes, I've got this one. Sorry, you're watching me fussy cut again. If you've got little bits of, let's say, a leaf missing, where they've overlapped and you've fussy cut them out before, don't worry, just make it up. So that's got a straight edge and I don't want a straight edge. So you see we've got that which I could put coming out there. Or I could do it the other way around. Could even come from beneath some of the other layers. Would look quite nice, I think. Less of that. Yes, I think we'll go with that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start from the top and go downwards. So I want this flower on foam pads on the top of that flower. And it doesn't, I don't need to have all of the flower and leaves with foam tape on them because not all of them are duplicated. None of this is stuck, but I'm working from the top downwards. So that's a duplicate of that leaf. That is a duplicate of that flower. So if I just put that on like that, I've got those two attached together. I might just ink the edges of my flowers just a little bit. Just a tiny little bit, just to give them an aged look. Yeah, that'll do, I think. And that will eventually go back on there. So I'm going to stick that to the frame. So if I think whereabouts my glue wants to be on my frame, and then glue that on there. So then I can lift that off just for a moment and this side. I said lift it off, now I'm putting it back again. Right, so that flower wants to be attached there. So I'm just going to flip it over, put some glue on there, and then that flower will attach on there. Yeah, it's very only just attached, but it is attached. I think what I'll do before I stick those on, I'll let that set, and I'm going to glue down my lace doily. So let's check that's right again. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll keep my finger on one part, lift it up, where I know it won't matter if it shows. So that will be under the frame. Lift this portion up a little bit. Just put little dabs because this may well show. I put too much glue, so I'll just put a little tiny bit on there because the frame will mostly glue it down. Alright, so we'll pop our frame back. And we decided we were going here and there. So what I'll do is I'll put glue onto my frame. Down this edge, down that edge. And that will pick that up. So then I can press it down. So I'll just press that down so that's attached to there. And then I can decide if we want that rose there. So I can add some more glue here for our other rose to go on. Because it's PVA, I've got a bit of wiggle room. There we are. And then I think that will be just about right there. I'll just ink the edge of that rose now that it's set and glued on. I can add a bit more ink. Should have done it before really, but there we are. So then I can glue this on with PVA and our panel stroke card will be finished. So I'm going to add PVA all the way around my frame where it won't show. Also on the back of my paper elements just to make sure they're stuck. There's no point in putting any on these bits because they'll be raised up. But the ones that will be flat to the paper I will do. And we just add it there. There we are. So I will probably put something fairly weighty onto the top just so it makes sure it sticks down on those 2 points and these 2 points here to make sure it sticks. But that basically is our lead card because I'll stick it onto a card base and probably put a sentiment just here. Hope you like that. I did consider putting a little bit of raffia in between the layers, which I still might, but it needs to be, I think, a little bit shorter. And a little bit different layers. So I just tied a knot in some raffia and I've just cut the ends so the different lengths. Still not sure. No, I think I'm going to leave it off. I like it as it is. I have got, when I find it somewhere. That's the one I want, silver. I've got these in silver and gold, and they're just like gel pens, but they are really quite sweet for adding little highlights to things. So I just go where there's a little bit of white and just add a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect, you don't have to completely cover all the white. Just a little bit of glitz by just a little bit of silver fine liner. Just do it on all the, and on this one as well. You don't have to, as I say, you don't have to be perfect, you can just add little bits here and there. Just go over it when you want a bit more. And that's quite pretty. You could use the gold. The gold looks nice as well. There's a little bit of gold on here. You can go, and you can actually dab it off if you don't want it so bright. Just dab it with your finger. Just sort of remove a little bit of it. So there we are.